Welcome to Make Your Mark Live. I am Mark Moyer, and I'm super excited to have this episode with a couple of guys that one I've known for a little while, Jon Landry, who's not only a friend of mine, but he played professional hockey for many seasons. I think it was 74 seasons. And then is now in the world of finance, but also does some work with athletes and helping them transition, which is near and dear to my heart. And then secondly, I've got Carrick, and Connor is a member of the New Jersey Devils, and he's gotten a sort of an unwelcomed vacation or break from his sport. And I think everybody in this boat is feeling like a lot of this has been unwelcomed, but it's sort of what we're all facing. So what we want to talk about today is really some of the things that not only athletes but even non-athletes can do while they've gotten this sort of, again, unwelcome break. And really, first and foremost, why don't each of you say a quick hello? Connor, say hi and a couple words about you and what you're doing right now.
Hey guys, I'm Carrick with the New Jersey Devils. Usually I'm worried about my gap control and trying to, break the puck out for our team, but we're on a league-wide hiatus, so just trying to stay fit, stay ready to play tomorrow if we have to, but preparing for the worst if it's longer than that. So interesting circumstance, but excited to talk with ex-teammate of mine, Jon Landry, today. Lance, what's up?
Thank you for that. That was awesome. My name is Jon Landry. I played professionally for 11 years. One of those seasons was with Carrick. We actually were stallmates, so we got to sit next to each other and compare our equipment, and techniques and a lot about life. But I left the game in 2017 after a long kind of career trying to make it as an underdog. I played, originally from Montreal, played Division III at Bowdoin College, studied economics, and then kind of embarked on this passion project of mine to be able to sign 3 NHL deals, which was pretty, amazing for a kid from Montreal. Fortunate enough that my parents put me into a good path of education, was able to transition into a 6-figure salary in finance. And so in 2017, I kind of retired without any clue what I wanted to really focus on, whether stay in hockey or kind of pursue the passion in finance, and was able to, successfully transition and, get started with my next career. And so, I think a lot of players are likely uncertain of their next steps, especially right now. And I think this probably, for some of them, not Carrick, but for some of them, they might not see their teammates again ever. They might not play again. So there's a lot of uncertainty with everything. And this is something that I went through personally, and, happy to share in this discussion today.
That's great. Well, thanks, guys. And I really appreciate not only you being here, but having your perspective, because it's, I think we're all having different experiences with this in a bunch of different ways. But I think first and foremost, from the work that I do with athletes, I know this, and I know that you guys as athletes know that, while you're playing a sport or even being involved with a business, it's really important to have a daily routine, whether it's, exercise in the morning and then you go to work, or you go to the rink or the court or whatever sport you're in. And then from there, it's all about, having different types of things going on during the course of your day to keep the momentum going, keep you motivated, keep things, blood flowing and so forth. But do me a favor and tell me if Connor, you can start by giving me a sense of what would be a typical day while you're playing, while you're in season, for you.
So I'll go through a practice day. We normally practice at 11 or 12 we played the night before. I usually get up probably 4 hours before practice, spend the first hour of the day prepping. For me, that looks like, planning out my food for the day, looking at some of the exercise routines that I want to, focus on. Maybe I have a particular body part that's giving me trouble. I'll do, I have my little journaling, sort of process. It's it's equal parts journaling, planning, dreaming. And that covers everything from schedule, the food content for the day, which I already mentioned, people I want to reach out to, and then focus points for my day at the rink. The next hour, because I live on the East Coast, I allot for traffic. And then I usually get there about 2.5 hours before, and then I'll start the process I just discussed at home. jump on the ice. I have a couple, sort of warm up routines that are, very skill oriented that I'll try and get in before practice, just because the NHL practice doesn't make a lot of room for individual development. So you're kind of on your own to maintain the best of your game, and then participate in team practice. And then thereafter, it's essentially a day long cool down to get ready for it the next day. So post practice, usually I have my sort of sauna, cold tub routine, some soft tissue stretches that I'll do before that, grab lunch, go home, and then try and, turn off Captain Sirius before I get home to my wife and my dog, and then, re-enter for family life, and eat a good dinner, get to bed at a decent hour, and get ready to do it again.
So most of us experience the exact same kind of a day, I think, especially the soft tissue work and with the ice cold bath. But obviously that's shifted a little bit, Connor. So what's today like, and what are you trying to do? Because one of the things that we like to reinforce is that it's really essential if your life has been impacted by this virus, whether it's again, and you're still healthy, but you're now not going to the rink, not going to the office, you're at home, you're in front of a computer, you're sitting on a couch, you're in front of the TV, wherever you are. What do you think are some of the things that whether it's an athlete or even a non-athlete, but tell me about the importance of maintaining a routine?
My experience as an NHLer, you become really intimate with what's controllable and what's not. So, John can talk to this. Sometimes shoot a puck, it hits the post, and away the other team goes and puts it in your own net, and all of a sudden you're -1 versus +1. So you have that knowledge of what you can do versus what's beyond you. So there's obviously this big beast out there that doesn't need any more attention. That's all beyond our control. So for me, it's about, can I take the best one available? And for me, that's as simple as just moving and sweating and trying to maintain a physical level of training that's as on par with, if I had access to NHL facilities as I could. Of course, there's no substitute for being able to do the job and be on the ice, but it's at its core, that's the easiest thing to do. And then flat out, the way the league, that's kind of the soft advice, is like, I enjoy the process. I enjoy taking control of what I can. Sort of the hard, kick in the butt is we're still expected to be able to play tomorrow if we open up. We're still technically being paid through the end of the regular season. With all the financial turmoil out there, I think it's, kind of like the least I could do to stay ready. So it's twofold. One, I do enjoy taking care of my profession and my job and my body. And on the other half side of the coin, that is my job, and I'm still technically getting paid to do it. So, do it well.
Got it. So now someone like you, John, you've sort of obviously transitioned into more of the professional, the working world, I guess, or, in your case, the finance space. How are you staying engaged, and how have you developed a routine working from home?
Well, I think I would like to transition back to when I decided to retire, and then before getting into work. And that was kind of that period of uncertainty where, you go from this regimented daily practice, you're surrounded by, 20 of your new best friends for that year. And then there's a hard stop. And then you're trying to decide, am I going to play the next year? Which teams, and then you go through that process. And so when I finally made the decision to not play the following season, well, it was more about getting moving like I was doing before. So that was kind of like starting my engine. And, my sister gave me the good advice, says, just do at least 15 minutes. And so when you train as hard as we have trained from, 12 until 34, you don't really have the same oomph. And so for me, it was just getting that 15-minute workout in to then start your day, which then you could go into, all right, what do I need to achieve today? And just get that sweat. Not much has changed now working from home. It's, when are we going for the run? What types of stretches or 20-minute yogas can I do here in the apartment? And so just trying to get that bit of normalcy that athletes need in order to start that part of the brain. And for me, it was moving or like getting in the shower to change up the current dynamic, getting dressed, putting on, the clothes, not the jogging pants. One of the team rules that I had playing early in my career was no jogging pants allowed to the locker room. And that was something that I kept going throughout my career. And that's sort of the little professionalism that, you've got to get ready for your day, no matter what obstacles you have to achieve. So it's changed working from home, but not that much.
Got it. So back to Connor again. I think that your days now and sort of going forward a little bit. And yes, you've got to be on the ready, but being on the ready means physically, but also mentally. And we talked earlier today about the idea of really having your body ready, but also having your mind and your heart focused at the same time. And so today, for example, I know that you had mentioned that you were going to be doing different things at certain times. So you clearly have developed, even though it's just been a few days, sort of a little while, a routine of some sort with some flexibility. But tell me about why that's important to you, and is it more so for the mind or the body, or what do you think that routine is important for?
I think it's both. I think structure for me kind of equals freedom of thought. Like when I kind of execute what I want to, it allows me to get outside the the anxieties that surround our game, my career right now. And frankly, I am trying to look at this as an opportunity. I'm around my family a lot right now. It's a great chance for us to work on a relationship because divorce rates and that are high for athletes. How much time do they really spend with their spouse? Are they simply sort of war generals, operating at home, or are they real partners? So this is a good time for us. It's been a great test, and really we've succeeded quite well. I think as an athlete, while that routine can serve your career, I also think it can make Jon talked about the athleticism of having to adjust after. This is a good test in terms of how dynamic can you be as a person. Like, what do you really need to be your best self? And I just think that there's so much time and there's really just time available to get outside what you normally would be doing in a way that hopefully this is really a one-of-one scenario. But I just think there's too much to be learned about the self, the craft, opening up me, being able to spend some brain space on things that I otherwise would be too focused to arrive at.
That's fantastic. So, before we go any further, I'm inviting everyone to feel free to ask any questions you'd like, and you can put them in the chat box there, and we'll be able to ask those throughout. This is very much, I want it to be almost like a town hall kind of a situation here, and not just a straight presentation and Q&A at the end. So feel free to ask any questions throughout. Now, going back a little bit, we talked about now the importance of the routine. In terms of fitness itself, Jon, you mentioned, yoga, and you mentioned some short exercises that you might do. And then Connor, earlier you mentioned, especially in the sport of hockey, where you need to have explosiveness versus maybe a steady pace if you're a soccer player, and that may be more stamina related and so forth. But there are, hundreds and hundreds of videos out there and all kinds of places you can find different types of workouts. But is there anything that you like to really rely on? Why don't each of you tell me a little bit about some of the exercises that you think could be good for almost anybody?
I'll go first. I've tried to move for a long time to extend that cardio pace. So I do have a bike, where I'm staying right now. It's a great resource. I do have access to outside. And what I'll do is I'll try and extend my heart rate from like 135 beats per minute all the way up to like 155 for 60 to 90 minutes. And then I'll do a lot of soft tissue, like stretching thereafter. Because I did, I know we took a break, mid-season, but, Jon could talk about like when you've put 60 games in that piggy bank, like you've got a whole host of injuries that you're playing through. So this is a good time really to heal some of those up. And then, secondly, I'll do more anaerobic stuff. So think like your intervals, something similar to what would resemble a hockey shift. There's no comparison to skating, but it's the best, it's really the best thing you can do. And then moving really explosively after extended warm-up period, just because I haven't been, kind of on top of my, you can't go back to what you were doing like right away at the end of the summer. You've got to build up to it. So that's kind of what that purpose is for. And then the last element would be maybe more your strength component, which is kind of traditional lifting, your big movement, squat, hinge, deadlift, pull, press. I don't really have access to a full-blown home gym, so that's a little bit of the part that's maybe lagging in my routine, but also like just my natural build. I'm a thicker guy, so that kind of takes a lower percentage of my like pie chart of training anyway. So it's been good.
And how about you, John? What do you
For me, it's just about checking the box. I mean, I'm finding new passions. I've always been super, athletic in terms of liking to play any sport. So now in the city, I like to play squash, tennis, and then don't have access to that now. So it's just, I hate running, but I've been going for runs along the Hudson River every single day. Going through the transition of having so much time to do whatever you want and just focus on athletics, and now having like a limited time because you're actually like working. I came to the hard realization of that, where I asked my fiance, I was like, well, we need groceries, but I also want to work out. Like, which one am I like? And like Connor would never have any, thing to do with that right now. Cause when you're a player, like I have time to do everything. I can, go to the doctor on Tuesday. I can take my car for an oil change. Like I can do whatever. And then now it's like, that 8:30 to 6:30 PM, you're like, eat well or go to the gym. And then you're like, gosh, like, so those are kind of like the tougher things that you come to realize. And you're like, wow, like Anne-Marie, my fiance, like you've been crushing it for a long time to be able to stay fit, be super productive at work and eat well. I'm like, wow, that's, New Yorkers are very intense that way. So for me right now, focus on work, building my body back up to be, what I call an athlete. That's what I've been trying to do.
And so, I mean, look, at the end of the day, and now it's a little bit more challenging to quote eat well because we're all having little challenges finding the right foods and so forth. But look, so we've covered really the importance of having a routine during the day, and then the importance of as much as you can remain physically active, and then eating fairly well. But one of our attendees has asked a question, and it's pretty important. As an athlete, what are some of the things that, now that there's a little bit of extra time, an athlete can do to really further their brand and sort of look at their own, again, personal branding? And so Connor, I know that you spent some time on social media and Instagram, so forth. What are some things that you feel you'd recommend other athletes do that they can sort of not just promote themselves, but maybe more importantly, add value out there and really improve how they look, so that when the time comes that they need to leave their game and their sport, there's a fair amount of demand from people to want to be involved with that athlete?
I think you have huge numbers of people simply on their phone right now because they're not attending to the tasks that otherwise would be grabbing their attention. So some people are scared, some people are looking for entertainment. As an athlete, you can kind of you can be a resource in that regard. So the way I've taken it is, I think I've got more time to connect to the fans, so I get a lot of direct messages and comments and things like that. I try to touch base with those people because there's usually real people behind those accounts. I think in terms of trying to spread where I'm at health wise, I think is a big one, because a lot of people don't have that space regarded that in their home that's reserved for movement, like they would a gym. So they're having a hard time, getting in that zone or getting into a place where they can begin to move. And I guess I've just always considered myself a bit of a rabbit. So like, if I'm not going to put the work in and encourage others, like, it's not going to be done out there. Because people like, Jon Landry are still trying to work from home and still trying to, do their job. My goal is to kind of be a nudge for people to act in their own best interest, because it is easy in a time of scarcity, in a time of fear, to be self-sabotaging.
That's great. That's a great answer, and it's so true. I think that a lot of people do rely on looking up to others, whether they're other athletes or celebrities, etc., for some sort of guidance. And sometimes it's misplaced, but other times it's a good thing. John, how about you? How much do you get involved with social media and your brand, and what are you doing about it?
For me, like, this is something that's somewhat new to me, in terms of, maybe I was at the later stage, or like the millennial cutoff. But for me, it was all about networking. It was something that I took pride in, while I was playing, and whether it was with the existing fans, and finding people that I could connect with. The number of times that I've been invited over for Sunday night dinner, in the minor leagues, when I was playing in random places. But I took people up on that. It was like an opportunity to go connect, and so, but also the ability to reach out to people. Being that I was a professional hockey player, like, people are much more responsive, and so I guess that's one of the recommendations that I would respond back to. The question is, now's the time to build the network, and like, talk to as many people as possible. Set up meetings, set up calls, schedule it, put it in your calendar, because, like, these are the things that are real life, like, exercises that, set up a call with someone, reach out to someone, say, hey, I want to ask you questions, I'm curious about this, and can I get 15 minutes of your time? Make sure you follow up the night before. Make sure you follow up 5 minutes if they need to reschedule. And then you're always sending a thank you note in order to build that thing. And then with networking, like, some people, they all want to talk about themselves, but you have to have good questions in order to ask them, and then keep track of that information. And then it's throughout the year that you're sending little tidbits of information. And I'm working with another player on this who's playing in Switzerland, and he included me on the email that he sent to a real estate broker that he was networking with, that he's like, hey, John, I actually did it. Like, I'm like, good job. Like, you had nothing else to do for the whole season and you sent one email. But, like, that's the type of thing that we need to be doing now, and advocating for players that, yes, you're building your brand on social media, but you're also have this opportunity to build this network of influential people that can get things done with whatever you want to do later in life. So that's, for me, building a brand network. If you don't know how, like, ask people. It's not that hard, but there's a polite way to do it.
That's great, John. And yes, obviously, that's something I talk quite a bit about, is building that network, but also leveraging it and using it, you know, in the best way possible. But, one thing that I'll talk about regarding athletes and then non-athletes is that, I've met plenty of athletes who, if you ask them to, in their locker room, they're extremely comfortable, obviously. But you put them in a conference room surrounded by executives, they're not as comfortable, and they're a little bit intimidated sometimes. And then on the flip side, you put one of these executive professionals type people into a locker room, and they're also uncomfortable, and so on. And what I try to explain is that, all you've got to do is really ask. And John, you mentioned a good point there, where you say it's okay to leverage the fact that you're a professional athlete to reach out to people, but you're not reaching out because you're reaching out to a fan. You're reaching out to somebody who happens to be maybe a senior executive at a company that, geez, someday you'd either like to work for, work with, have as a client, whatever it might be. But it's really amazing how, especially a tool like a platform like LinkedIn, which I use a ton, and it's absolutely incredible how many people you can reach out to now that you never could have done 10, 15, 20 years ago. I mean, the idea that you can connect with C-level executives or heads of, founders of companies, or quite frankly, athletes. There are thousands and thousands of current and retired athletes that are on a platform like LinkedIn. And one thing I recommend is that you really target reaching out to people that shared fellow sort of similar experiences. So it may have been playing the same sport, or it may have been going to the same schools, or it may have been coming from the same region or town or whatever it is. But it's really incredible. And Connor, I don't know how much, I know that you have a profile on LinkedIn and so forth, but And I know, John, you're really on it a fair amount. But I think sometimes, especially, I don't want to say younger people, that sounds however it sounds, but there's a reluctance to go on there because maybe the impression is it's for older people or whatever. And I think and obviously they stick to some of the more fun ones like Instagram or Snapchat, whatever it might be. So I would encourage every athlete who's listening and every non-athlete to really take this time. It's just such a great time to do this because now more than ever, most people have, I don't want to say more free time, but more available time to get that relationship going and get it started. Is that something that you guys have seen at all?
To talk to John, talk to his point about the power of if you want to know what a person cares about, show me your schedule kind of thing. I did create my LinkedIn, couldn't tell you when. But unlike a lot of my other social media platforms, like I do have scheduled in time. I schedule in, sort of like my content creation, when I want to, what type of photo I want to use, how do I want to respect people's attention so I can deliver, what I have to say to have the most impact. But LinkedIn's been a step that, I haven't necessarily taken, and there's no reason other than it hasn't found its way in my schedule, because I am someone that follows through with agreement, like with meetings that I set for myself. I've always been wired that way. It's simply been, everyone's got a, pile of books at home that they haven't read, and that's just stuck in there right now.
Yeah, that was me too. I always had one like personal, and I think I'm the same as Connor. I had one personal development book or like business book, and then I had one like pleasure book. But the stack files up, and you're like, okay, now I got to focus on these.
Wait a second. Where's John? Where's my book and all that? We'll get to that eventually. But anyway, so in terms of the networking, that's essential. But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about, and especially maybe this is best for Connor right now. Now that you've got a routine down, but tell me a little bit about some of the secondary interests you have right now, whether it's a hobby or something else that you happen to be interested in outside of hockey.
Mark, I do, I am taking more time to honestly fill requests like this where we sit down and talk on a platform. I do get a lot of requests from whether they're business podcasts, athletic podcasts. So I've been doing, one or two of these a day. I do try to limit, sort of my phone time, so I'm not, getting too hot on it. I'm very into coffee. It's something we talked about earlier. It's kind of a hobby of mine that I've been, looking into. I did in partnership with the NHLPA, I've been doing some like personal branding deep dive, like what is it I really want to eventually execute on. And then I've just been reaching out to event planners with the goal of eventually hosting my own like mental health event, charity event. So it's kind of discussing, those are kind of the three: physical fitness, coffee, and what I'm eating, because I'm, very into that. And then eventually trying to grow my personal brand and ability to execute that muscle, whatever you want to call it, to eventually launch my own event.
Pete had a quick question in here, and I just want to jump in one of the questions. And he was, just curious to know if your exercise routine and your fitness is based on any sort of previous study that you've done specifically, or is it something that is, I don't want to say common knowledge to athletes, or is it more of a, directive from the team or the league saying, here's how you should work out?
So I work with Ian Mack. You can find him on Instagram. He's Tomahawk Science is the name of the group that we use. He, I think, is one of the best in the business. I distill what we do every summer. I train in Chicago, where I'm from, with what we do. Our strength coaches, for example, in New Jersey, are a little bit more lifting heavy. So I implement a little bit of that just to stay current if I was to be thrown back in that routine in, say, a week. And actually someone, John, you might know, Guy Moyer, does a lot of the Eldoa and myofascial stretching. And that's just his specialty is sort of how to keep the tissue healthy enough to maintain the rigorous demands year in, year out. So I kind of between those three heads, that's my approach.
How about you, John?
For me, it was all about learning to operate in travel and high rigorous like schedule. And so like thinking of new ways of activation. And for me, it was all about activation, whether it was with bands or fascial stretching or breaking down the fascial tissue with the product called like Washa, which was this like self massage machine. Kind of put yourself through a little bit of pain in order to get the body moving again. But simple exercises to activate the core. That was for me, because everything originated from the core, and being able to start there and just your body shuts off when you work so hard, and you go through, it goes into recovery mode, but we forget to wake it back up by you sit on the couch, you sit in an awkward position, your shoulders come in, like you forget that the body needs to be woken up. And those types of exercises that Connor's talking about. So that's similar to me.
That's cool. So here's a question that I'm really curious about, and I'd love to get your advice from both of you on so there's, as we all know, hockey's been suspended, baseball's been delayed quite a bit, NBA, all these sports, but also it's really, really hurt a lot of the student athletes and how they've had to not only, March Madness, but we also know about a whole lot of other sports that have basically been, cut out. All these, especially seniors that were dreaming of their last swim meet, their last whatever. And what kind of advice can you give them? I think more importantly, and you talked about this earlier, Connor, about the wanting to do a mental health event. What kind of advice can you give, especially the younger athletes, to really get past a lot of that? Because it's, I remember when I was younger, and I can tell you right now with my son, it's the same way. You get so excited to play. You get so excited for that upcoming match, game, whatever it is. And it's sort of been taken away through no fault of your own, through no actions of your own, and not even an injury. It's just been taken away. How can you, what are some ideas on how to cope with that?
As an athlete, you're raised to like strengthen and create this relentless will, to bend whatever circumstance you can to achieve the result you're desiring. So when I was a younger player, a younger pro, all the way into my childhood, you'd play poorly, you'd be upset, you'd act on that anger, you train in that anger. You might be in a bad mood all the way until you play again. As I've gotten older, you realize how hot that fire burns, and there becomes an element where learning to be more accepting of what's going on. A coach made a decision that wasn't in your favor. Puck bounced in a way that isn't went against you. Being able to kind of accept past events and be able to get out of a frustrated state. I don't think that's very productive for athletic performance or just overall life well-being. And being able to transition into, okay, these are the cards I currently hold. Where can we go from here? And that's not to be like okay, this is what happened, boom, next type thing. I do think you have to make room to feel how you're what you're going through. And it just might be right after you take the first steps you can towards the next best creation of the reality you're looking for.
Now, do you take is there anything you do specifically, whether, like in my case, for example, one of the things I do is I learned quite a while ago that when I was upset about something or I'd read something and I wanted to reply back with an email, and the first email is just always really never a good idea to send. But I was taught that to sort of read everything 3 times before I hit send, and just reread it and make sure that I understood fully what's happening on the other side, right? And who's reading what and so forth. And I think the same goes for now, and you're right, Connor, I think as we get a little bit older, we become more accepting of what life throws at us. I mean, I remember as a kid, I would get really upset even with a baseball rainout, and I had nothing to do with that, but it's something I'd get really upset about. And now you realize, well, rain has to happen, and it's just going to happen on some of your game days. So is there anything is there a specific thing you do, whether it's taking a deep breath or anything that can help you cope through some of this stuff?
One cool exercise I do is I use the Daily Stoic. It's a book on Stoicism. They're little one-page reflections with the date on them by Ryan Holiday, who I had the luxury of watching talk and meet, and he gave me his book. And it's cool because I've had it over a year now, and I annotate it with, how I relate to the reflection. But now I have a little couple sentences about how I felt exactly this day a year ago. So I've done this the second year I've done this now. So you get a reminder of the problems you were dealing with a year ago, and are they the same, and have you developed at all in being able to wrestle with those things. So that's kind of a hard pen and paper one. I do a lot of breath work. There's no shortage of apps. Wim Hof's great. Where I try to just change that physical state. You can feel that stuckness start to bind up, in your chest when you're upset with something. And so for me, Tony Robbins brands it peak state, and everyone's got their name for it. But at the end of the day, you have to nudge yourself out of, the state that you're not wanting to feel, to get into a higher performing, sense of operation.
So can I expect next time you're on the ice playing for the Devils, and you're playing against the Rangers, let's say, and you're getting, let's say, pretty amped up, should I expect you to stop and do some breath work before you get too agitated? Or
you'll see it if you come down, before the game. I'll be laying there doing my, my meditation sort of thing. And I wouldn't put it in, if you come down before the game, I wouldn't put it in the top 10 weirdest things you'll see. It's everyone's got their own, recipe for success, and I'm no different.
I meant actually with like 2 minutes left in the game, you're going to stop and say, guys, time out. I got to do my breath work.
No, I mean, honestly, I do have a longer routine, but if I can get 1 or 2 in there,
good,
that are steady state, I think you just, the longer I've played, the more you appreciate the ups and downs. Like, I've been scored on, and I've gotten to a place now where it's like, all right, cool, I can score the winner now, or I can tie it up now.
good.
You can make the story. You become more appreciative of the whole process, and the guy on the other side of the puck gets paid too, and has a long life resume of success. You're not the first Joey scored on either. So it's par for the course. It's a game played by Sharks, and you got to be ready for the next play somehow.
Well, that's well stated, because I think that especially with this whole virus thing going on and everything, I think what I really try to put out there as much as I can is that really look for the silver lining as much as you can, and people talk about gratitude, but I mean, I think it really hits home now, where for those of us that have managed to not necessarily get affected too badly by this thing, or whatever, just be grateful for so many things that you've got, and the people you have around you. But I don't want to take away from John. John, tell me a little bit about do you have any things that you do to sort of bring yourself back down?
I don't think we have enough time to go through my mental toughness regimen of when I went through in my career, and Connor knows a lot about it and heard a lot of different things that I used to do, breath work and the art of the possible books, and smiling while you're out there, even if you got scored against, like, it go on and on. But in terms of the tough career transition, it has been tough. Like, it was not at all easy, but it comes down to being an athlete. It comes down to having a routine. It comes down to goal setting, and my goal used to always be this, and now it's changed to this, and this. And so you have small little peaks and valleys in your career, whether it's sport or in life. And it's, my dad and I always used to say, like, you're at the next checkpoint. You're at the next checkpoint of where you want to go, and then you're kind of reevaluating in order to get to where you ultimately want to go. So for me, it's just about goal setting, and creating a plan, like creating an action plan. And so, what's your end goal? Work backwards. What will someone let me do right now in order to get to where I want to be? And so that for me was, means a lot about who I am as a person, as well as, all right, here's the problem. How do I create a path forward?
So taking a step back, one of our attendees had a question that I thought was pretty good, and we're asking both of you. Tell me about a time that you really had you faced some significant adversity, and how did you get past it? If you could think of one event or one thing a big, huge hurdle or something that really happened badly to you, how did you get past it, and did you come out stronger from it?
My theory on this whole virus even has been, I've considered the question: does adversity reveal character or build it? And the way I've tried to go about it is it can be both. So one of the more pivotal moments in my career was a Washington Capital. That's who drafted me. I'd played there 2.5 years, up and down, spent some time in Hershey with John, and then eventually get moved at the trade deadline to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I just knew I was entering such a judged phase of hockey. Like there's about 20 games left in the NHL, and I still had AHL eligibility. So the NHL Leafs were finishing in last, but I was in their lineup every night. I was being evaluated there, and then I knew I was going down to the Marlies thereafter, the American League team, for the playoff run. And for me, I got super mission oriented, where I really got out of my own way. So one of the things that I was really clear on was, in games, I was doing everything I could to win. I'd obviously make mistakes over that course of time, but the way I was able to pitch it to myself was, if you care so much about how you do now, which is the reason that you're so frustrated that didn't go your way, you'll park it. Players play, they don't judge. Like, players play, coaches coach, managers manage. Let the decision makers be the one that judge during the game. If you want to beat yourself up at 2 a.m. tonight, that's a different battle. But while the game is being played, like, be here. And I think just kind of putting off that judgment during that hot zone of when the field of competition was going on, I think it really made room for me to be my best, and just kind of like emotional, physical clarity. And it was probably some of the best hockey I'd ever played.
Well, that's great. How about you, John?
It's a tough one to follow. That was well said. For me, my career, similarly, but way different. I was cut from many teams, and last to make many teams, but kind of always finished in the top of the scoring. And so I think every single year that I was cut or threatened to be cut was an opportunity to push back and improve. And so going from Division III to sign an NHL contract, there's many different career challenges, personally, family, financially, and so over an 11-year career, I can't really pick out one, but it was just those key moments where you knew your back was against the wall, but your passion for what you were trying to do was so much stronger, and you weren't listening to anyone else but yourself, and you were able to rise above the challenge that was ahead of you because of your passion and love for what you were doing. So for me, it was just using my passion to be able to achieve what I tried to achieve from a young age through a detour. Success definitely looked like that chart. It's not straight up. And so every time you were challenged, it was an opportunity to rise up.
Well, that's super. Well, John, that was just as well said. Well done. So wrapping things up a little bit, because I want to tie together some ends here. I mean, look, we've talked about the importance of having a daily routine. Again, whether you're an athlete or even a non-athlete and a professional, I mean, it's just important to keep that going, especially during these times right now. Secondly, we talked about the importance of really having some sort of routine physically as well, and trying to continue to sort of eat well and to try to think well, right? Keep that mind going and the heart going along with the body. And we've also talked about the importance of really trying to grow. John, you really said it well. I mean, grow that network and reach out and connect with people that you may not normally have thought about doing. And then, Connor, you brought up so many great points about how to really keep yourself grounded in the face of adversity. And this was all really great. Connor, going forward, how can some of the listeners, not just today, but also they'll listen to this on replay and so forth, how would you like them to maybe reach out to you directly if they have any questions about, sort of what it takes to be not just a professional athlete, but really to continue sort of forward in this sort of way? What's the best way for them to reach you?
At Connor Carrick will be my Instagram. Connor Carrick media at gmail.com is kind of my, I guess you call it my business inquiry email. I encourage people to reach out. I really enjoy the one-on-one dialogue. You can just get a lot more personal. People are different in that element than they are in a group setting. And then Mark, I just want to thank you for having me on. John, for calling me up to get on. I don't know if everyone here understands just how hard a road Lands had to reach an NHL contract. I think, he dogs himself about having a minor league career, but I can't even name another guy in recent memory that's been able to do what he did. Truly was a consummate professional every day. That's the true test of a pro in terms of, what are they like after game 60, after 3-3 and they're -9 on the weekend. And, Lands would, never happened to Lands. I think he actually had the best plus minus on our team that year, plus 27.
Yes, I did. Yes, good memory.
I
34 maybe, but
34
who was
counting. But John was a great influence on me as a young professional, and it was fun to set up shop today.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate that. And John, how about you?
I mean, for me, working in New York in finance and work with a lot of hedge fund, work in the hedge fund community, work in the private placements. So, anyone investing in venture capital, private equity, or late stage growth companies can find me on LinkedIn. But, I'm really passionate about connecting, athletes with investing and then challenging them to do more where they're at. So happy to have conversations around that. LinkedIn's the best way to connect with me and chat there.
Super. That's great. And gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I'll throw in my quick little plug that I encourage everybody to also, when you get the opportunity, go to markmoyer.com and specifically the MYM Live page that will be announcing future guests and future live episodes as they happen. Because again, the passion here and what we're trying to do is really elevate everybody's game, including athletes, and really help the athletes with their transition if they're leaving the sport and going into something else. I mean, that's always a very, very challenging time. Or helping athletes while they're still playing really start developing those secondary interests that can really help catapult them when they have to have the opportunity to retire and leave their sport. And as everybody's always said, there's a 100% retirement rate with athletes. So what we need to do is really help one another and help really, especially during these times. If we have the opportunity to reach out to people, please take that opportunity. A friendly phone call here and there is really something that will really change someone's day. And keep plugging away, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mark.
All
Thanks,
right,
Connor.
guys.
Thanks, Mark.
All the best.
See you guys.
Yeah.